Hi, everyone. We want to thank you for joining us for the Leadership Northern Colorado Leadership Moment event today. My name is Amanda Miller, and I work with the Leadership Northern Colorado Steering Committee, and I want to thank you all for taking your time today to join us for this leadership moment. First, we want to recognize and thank our sponsors with Canvas Credit Union. Their support of the Leadership Northern Colorado program makes all of this possible. So thank you to Canvas. I also want to recognize and thank our Leadership Northern Colorado Steering Committee members that dedicate time and energy to make all of these programs possible. So thank you to those of you that are on the call with us today. A few reminders, housekeeping before we begin our conversation with David. We'd ask that everyone please stay on mute during today's session. That will help cut back on any of the background noise that might be shared. If you do have questions for our speaker, please drop those into the chat feature. Todd Carl will be monitoring chat, and we'll have time at the end of the conversation to ask any of those questions to David today. We also want to announce that we have confirmed our speaker for the next session, which will be held on Tuesday, June 8th. So please mark your calendar for Tuesday, June 8th. We'll welcome our guest speaker, Chris Garcia. He is a Leadership Northern Colorado alum and is the Associate Director of Alumni Relations for the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley. I will be dropping the registration link into the chat here as we move into the conversation. So after today's discussion, please log on and register for that session on June 8th. So I will turn it over to Nancy Patton, who will be conducting our interview today, and she will introduce you to our guest speaker, David. Thank you.
Well, hello and welcome to today's leadership moment. Each of these short conversations is designed to connect you to the insight, inspiration, and life adventures of Northern Colorado's most interesting people. I'm Nancy Patton, one of the steering committee members for Leadership Northern Colorado, and I'll be the host for today's segment, which features David Rodriguez, owner of the Comedy Fort in Fort Collins. So thanks for joining us, David.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is cool.
Yeah, awesome. To set the stage for today's conversation, here's what you need to know about our guest. After growing up in Southern California and later moving to Arizona, in 2015, David Rodriguez burst upon the Colorado comedy scene by winning Denver Comedy Works' prestigious New Faces competition. Some previous winners include Cayton-Holland and Josh Blue. In 2016, he proved it was no fluke by taking first place in the Stand-up Showdown at the Denver Improv. And then in 2017, he won the Comedy Works Funny Final Four. David has been featured on NPR and has performed at numerous national and international comedy festivals. His comedic style is a mix of animated storytelling and insights into being a responsible young parent, living in a generation where growing up is generally frowned upon. In fall of 2020, he opened a brand new comedy club in downtown Fort Collins, the Comedy Fort. Because a comedy club where you're sitting close together indoors, laughing out loud, is of course the perfect business venture to start during a pandemic. If he's not on stage there, chances are he's at home with his wife, 2 small kids, and small dog, trying desperately to take a nap. It certainly sounds like you've had an interesting journey, David, and you jumped into business ownership and the leadership that goes with that adventure.
Yeah.
So here's our first question for you. What characteristics or skills do you think all leaders should possess?
Like you said, I kind of just recently have started to consider myself a leader. I guess it's been kind of building since I started comedy here. I started here in 2015, started getting to know the scene and stuff. And there's only like one open mic and one show when I started. And I was just like, there's a need and there's a demand for more shows, and we should build it. And nobody else seemed to want to do it. So I kind of just took it upon myself to start building things, and people responded well to it. And it was interesting to me along the way that people, they responded to that, but nobody else, like, still they saw it, they're like, this is great, I wish I could do that. And I was like, well, you can do that, anybody can do it. But not many people did, and so we just kept building our own things and gaining momentum. Oh, yeah. All right, well, we made it. I told them before, I was like, I've got 2 kids, they're downstairs, let's see how long they can entertain themselves. We made it, what, 3 minutes?
Believe me, David, we're
Yeah,
very
you can
used
have that. Yep.
to having people join us.
She was just off screen. I didn't move it. She was just holding up a peanut butter cup, and she was just like, you can't say no if you're in a meeting. So she took the initiative, and she's gone now. I would say that the quality that has helped me the most would be like awareness, and not just like, you've got to have a vision and you've got to have drive to make that a reality, but you've got to have awareness for how it's going to be received, and the demand for whatever it is you want to make a reality. And kind of navigating that, and having the support of a community, and doing all the market research I could was definitely, because like on the surface level, people were like, yeah, comedy club, great idea, that should be great. And I was like, well, I bet it. And at its core, that was pretty much my pitch to the investors. I was just like, there's not one, it'll work. And they're like, yeah, you're right. So not everybody will have such a cut and dry scenario with what they want to build. But I feel pretty fortunate that there was this big hole in the community, because the comedy club is something that most major cities have. And comedy, before the shutdown, before live entertainment, was the most dangerous thing you could partake in. Stand-up was going through a boom, and the scene was growing exponentially, and the popularity was growing. And so it seemed just like a perfect natural fit, and things just kept kind of falling into place. And I was the only one that wanted to, sort of undertake this project. If anybody else did, I'm sure everybody would have rallied around them, but nobody did. So it's me.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things I heard was that you saw a need, you were aware, and did what nobody else was willing to do. And I think those are all things that leaders need to have, in addition to that passion and vision and all the other things you mentioned. So thank you.
Yeah, a lot of the comics have the passion and the vision for comedy, but show production and giving people a venue and a means is the whole other side of the business that most comics want to keep separate. They're like, well, I don't want to, I don't want to deal with all that. I just want to do comedy. And if you don't, and early on, running my own shows and in other venues, you've got to rely on other people, and you've got to rely on, so many factors that are not under your control. And so it seemed like the right move for me to try and get as many things under my personal control as I want, because I have experience in doing things the right way, in terms of producing live comedy. So it seemed natural to me that, like, the more things that I could control, the better it would be. And this is, kind of the final iteration of that line of logic.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next question, which is there a mistake that you see leaders make often?
Yeah, it would be, in our world, it's just inflexibility, probably. especially with comedy and the way our social landscape is constantly changing and evolving, sort of, a resistance to change and holding, maybe the way that things have always been done in too high of a regard, and being not wanting to break the mold. Like comedy clubs, I wanted to make my comedy club new and different and better than the normal clubs in several ways, against the advice of several professionals. Like we don't have a drink minimum. We're not forcing people to buy things. I think that's an archaic thing, and that, and people don't like it. And so why would I have something in place in my business that people don't like? I am of the opinion that the support we'll get from the community and people that show up and they're never pressured to buy something and they never have a negative experience in that respect. Like they'll tell their friends, they'll bring more people, that will bring in more business than we will miss out on from those few drinks that people will be forced to buy that they wouldn't otherwise buy, because then those people will leave. And I think that's a net negative. So there's just several things about old school comedy clubs that I don't think are relevant to today's style of living and expectations from consumers, that I just didn't want to put in. And several people are like, well, you got to have that or you won't be able to do. I'm like, well, we'll see, because to me, I built a place that is it's the best for customers and for performers and for everybody, based on what I think it should be. And really, I guess I didn't have to push for that because I'm in charge. And that was a new feeling, like not being met with really any resistance, because there was just people like, well, I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm like, well, doesn't matter. This is how we're doing it. So learning how to shift my thinking in that way was new, because normally if you're doing something at somebody else's venue, it's their rules. You got to kind of do whatever they say. And it's going well so far. So far so good. But again, and I'm willing to see how it goes, and get the responses from people, and take feedback and criticism and whatever it is, to keep evolving our model and business to whatever, to optimize everybody's experience and enjoyment.
I love it. And if there's ever a time to, sorry, I'm being flexible with my cat. If there was ever a time to not be traditional and to be flexible, it was during the pandemic. So
Right.
yeah, probably the only way you could make things work in that time frame. That's awesome.
Yeah, we have a flexible lease term for sure. That was one thing, because we took over Hodie's Half Note, which is a music venue, because they obviously were not able to operate during all this, and the owner just he was wanting to close it down before the pandemic. So he was just like, we can figure something out. If you have to be shut down because of restrictions, you'll only pay a certain, just like bare minimum amount type thing. So we were never pressured to be open to unsafely. So as things started to come back open, we've kind of just opened up with that, and being fluid there has definitely helped us out. This project, it started about 3 years ago, the early planning and location scouting and stuff. So it wasn't like everything shut down. I'm like, here we go, time to capitalize. Let's but it's definitely not ideal, but we've tried to make it work in our favor. The reduced capacities was an opportunity to get the new staff in and get everybody used to everything without having to day one open up the doors and blast 300 people through there in a night. And maybe stuff is going to break down. It could be chaos, and don't want to start out with negative reviews. So everything starting out smaller was a blessing in some ways, and people have had a great time. And now our whole staff is vaccinated, which I'm super grateful for, and things are starting to loosen up and get back closer to normal, which is great.
Awesome. So, you're talking about some of the things you've had to go through to get the business open, but what do you think are the most important decisions you make as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, those certain things, capacity like pandemic related, have all that's been the weirdest part to sort of take the lead on, because I know how to produce comedy shows, but I don't know anything. I didn't know anything about opening a business before I started this. I knew what the business was going to be, but I didn't even know step one. I was just like, I figured there would just be like a big checklist and I would just have to get all these things. And it's really, you just go to the city and you're like, all right, what do I do? And they're like, I mean, for what? And you just have to kind of go step by step. And just having my staff being like, so what do we do? Like, what time do you want to open? What do you want to do here? When should we add shows? How many people? Like, just all of it. It's crazy. I definitely underestimated the amount of decisions I would have to make, just because my whole life I've worked for other people and you don't see that. You do your one role. There's really not, you take whatever complexities you have with that, but when it's the whole project, it's been interesting. I've had to learn to delegate and get my team members to take care of certain things themselves, and they're all great. So hiring a good core staff of people and having that sort of community and trust is so important as a leader, so that you don't go crazy with every single decision that you have to make. Having people you trust around you is super important, I have found.
Yeah, you kind of went through trial by fire, opening a small business in a whole new set of circumstances and learned a lot. Yeah. Hey, what's been your biggest challenge that you faced as a leader?
It has to be all of the COVID restrictions and everything that's come along with that. But it's been nice because, if we can open now and do well now, it's opening in the most challenging time possible I think will set us up for success, because we built such a strong core and, did everything the right, as good as we possibly could, as, the right way, as much as we possibly could. And as things expand, I can't imagine setbacks on the level of of what we've experienced the last year. So hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm sorry if I just jinxed the whole world by saying that.
Well, so our final structured question for you is, what is your favorite leadership book, or who's your favorite leader? What did you learn from that or them?
Yeah, so I haven't really read. I have one book, and I don't even really remember much about it. This is the author of the book hired me to help write a presentation about it and like make it funny. So that was a couple of years ago there, but I definitely remember there's one passage that stood out to me just about speaking, and it really resonated because it has a lot of parallels with stand-up, in my opinion, and that is to effectively just talk to a group of people. I'm just summarizing, you want to make everybody feel like you're having a one-on-one conversation with them. And if you can do that for every person that you're talking to at one time, that's the most effective way you can communicate something. And I think that's the basis of all good stand-up comedy, and the most genuine stand-up comedy is like you feel like the person on stage is talking to you and you're comfortable, listening to them. And that's the challenge of a performer, is you want to make, a crowd of 150 people feel like you're talking to them personally. So Martin Lanick is the guy's name, and I remember him being very nice. But I've always looked up to my father. He has always been a leader. He's always been, and he's been innovating ever since I can remember. He was a photographer, and as soon as digital photography became all the rage, he pivoted towards, putting his art out in different mediums. and he started 2 different businesses, both which are still going. He put his images on hospital curtains when that had never been done before. And so, instead of bland hospital room, you get the Bahamas or the Redwoods or something, because he hated the way hospitals felt sterile and cold. And he's like, I want to make them better for everybody. This seems like a no-brainer. Who wouldn't want this? And sure enough, like every place he took it, they're like, yeah, this is amazing. Of course, who wouldn't want this? And so then he had to learn all of the logistics of, making different fabrics and like the, health codes and just all the different tiny things that came along with that. And so watching him navigate that without compromising his own sort of, artistic vision for the thing and vision for the project has translated well to my venture as well.
Thank you. That was fabulous. And tell us the name of the book and the author again. And you can tell us your dad's name if you want as well. We love it when we have.
Yeah, the Leader Habit by Martin Lanik.
David, I've got one more question for you before we open it up for our attendees to fire their questions in at you. But what was your first job? How old were you?
My first job was just busboy at a local restaurant on Catalina. I was 12 years old, and my classmate worked there. His dad owned the restaurant. I was like, oh, that's cool. I want a job. Money sounds like important to have as a kid. And so I just went down after school and asked for a job. And he was like, yeah, I've seen you in the drama club plays. Like, yeah. All right. Oh, we can try it out. And I was so proud. I went home and we were all sitting around the dinner table, and I was like, I got a job today. And I was like, what? What? You're 12. And asking for things is important, and that has translated well into comedy too. And in the entertainment world, you got to ask for stuff to get things, but just being upfront and not waiting for other people to get things for you has always been, how I kind of did things. And that has stood out with people. And I guess I've kind of taken it for granted a little bit, because that's how I've always kind of operated, and didn't realize that wasn't the norm. But I guess that has lended itself towards me sort of building a comedy community here that ultimately led to opening a business.
Well, David, we've really enjoyed all your answers, but I know we've had some questions coming in. I've watched chat light up. Todd, do you have some questions queued up that you want to throw out for David?
Sure do. We've had a few good ones. David, we've got some folks here interested in how you book your shows, how you book the comedians, and then like what kind of acts we can expect this summer, and then kind of longer term going forward.
Yeah, Colorado is an amazing place for comedy. The Denver Comedy Works, and anybody who has lived in Fort Collins a while knows that there was a Comedy Works up here that closed in the early 90s. And I was in regular rotation as a host and a feature down there. And the Colorado is nationally respected as one of the best, indie scenes for comedy. Like there's LA and New York, obviously, are the big like professional hubs for entertainment. But right after that, there's Denver, and there's Austin, and there's Chicago, and there's Atlanta, and there's San Francisco, and places like that. And Fort Collins, again, I was like, there's an opportunity here, because so many people come through Denver to run shows here and have premium stage time to offer comics that come through. It seems like an easy way to network when I have a wife and kids and I can't go out on the road, which is like the path for most comics once they develop their act enough to get out there and start networking. I'm like, I'm going to bring it all to me, and just kept building through that. And because it worked well. The crowds here are great, especially compared to Los Angeles. Los Angeles is one of the worst places, just in general, but for comedy as well. But so they would come in here and comics would just be blown away. So word of mouth traveled fast, and we've only been open a couple months, but already, I mean, the comedy community is still pretty small. So nationally, I've gotten lots of messages from comedians with Netflix specials already that are like, hey, just checking in, would love to come to Fort Collins. And that's cool. That's the whole reason I'm doing this. But every Thursday already, we've got a showcase that is like all Colorado comedians with some special guests. I want to highlight Fort Collins comedians specifically as much as possible. They're in the club, they're volunteering, they're running the soundboard, they're helping out with shows and stuff. And the open mic will come back on Mondays. So I kind of, with with everything being unknown in terms of capacity and what would be possible, I kind of started filling out the calendar with comedians that I could directly contact and text and stuff, because that would have the most flexibility. I didn't want to go through agents and have to renegotiate everything every week because things are changing so much. So I've got some bigger acts planned already on the books for the fall, for sure. Every Friday, Saturday, there will be somebody there. And my goal is kind of to build the trust of the community that even if you don't know the name on the marquee, you can show up and it'll be guaranteed to be good, funny, relevant, smart comedy that people will enjoy, because I'm a comic as well and I'm pretty discerning, and this is my reputation on the line now too. So I'll be bringing in the best acts I can for sure.
Well said, man. We're excited to see what you got coming out this summer for sure. I'm kind of taken by you remarking that you were surprised by how many decisions you have to make on a day-to-day basis. And I'm kind of curious, with all those decisions you're making, would you describe yourself as like a pontificator? Do you think about all the ripple effects of your decisions? Are you more kind of think in the moment and then figure it out later, or somewhere in between? What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I probably somewhere in between. I'm pretty deliberate with most things that I do. For a medium that's based on instant gratification, it's tough to kind of shift gears and have long-term plans.
Right.
But yeah, again, trying to base everything on a foundation of things that just make sense is, I'm trying to set myself up to have less to worry about long terms on my decisions. If I just like have this path and compass of a general way I'm going to do things, and I've got staff around me that share the same sort of point of view, and we're all kind of on the same page. So once we get everything kind of streamlined and open and going, it'll be less decisions and more just bringing in the best talent that I can.
Awesome. Thank you. And then probably have time for one last one here. David, if you were going to design your perfect club, like top to bottom and everything that you want in there, what would your absolute perfect comedy club look like, you think?
Oh, you should come see the Comedy Fort, because that's what it is.
Cool.
I was like hands-on. I built it with several other local comics that have handy skills. It's a vision that I had in my head when, because we've been in Hody's for the open mic had been running there for 10 years. Every comic already called that building home. And so I, had plans for it. And that was easily, the most satisfying part, is having a vision in my head and working with my hands to create it. And now when you walk in there, everybody is walking into what I see as the perfect comedy experience. And there's some minor changes or minor additions still yet to come, but for the most part, it's up and running and it's cool, and everybody has responded positively to it so far. And I'm excited to keep building and keep spreading the word.
That's great, man. I'll give you back to Nancy now, but thank you very much for answering some questions. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I will book Leslie Jones as soon as possible. I see that in the chat as well. I know I think everybody at the same time saw that Super Bowl commercial where she's wearing the Rams sweatshirt and they're like, wait, what? Why is she, what? And then found out that she went to CSU. So I'm working, I know her agent, so we'll figure something out.
Well, I bet you'll have a sellout in no time for that one. We do need to wrap up our leadership moment. I really want to thank David Rodriguez, owner of the Comedy Fort, for taking time to share his leadership wisdom and journey. A reminder, the club is open weekends. Their website lists upcoming shows and ticket information. Also, if you want to share this video with someone, they will be posting today's recording on the Leadership Northern Colorado website, as well as links from the Leadership Northern Colorado Facebook page. And then we look forward to seeing everyone next month when our guest will be Chris Garcia from University of Northern Colorado. And Amanda, do you need to wrap up with anything?
No, Nancy, thank you for those closing comments. Just want to thank everyone for being here today. Nancy, thank you for running the interview. David, we sure thank you for taking the time and joining us this afternoon. We look forward to
thanks for having
seeing
me.
you at the Comedy Fort. And again, thank you to Canvas Credit Union for sponsoring Leadership Northern Colorado and making all of these sessions possible.
All right, goodbye, everybody.